The Korean mafia boss caught his new black maid training, his blind son like a warrior, but the truth left him speechless. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Now, let's jump right back in. The rain hammered against the windows of the black sedan as it cut through the neon-lit streets of Seoul. Kim Jin-woo sat in the back seat, his face illuminated by the glow of his phone, but his mind was elsewhere. Something had been gnawing at him all day, a sensation he couldn't name but had learned never to ignore. In his world, instinct was everything. It had kept him alive through 3 assassination attempts. It had warned him before the Park family tried to move against his territory. And now, that same instinct was pulling him home hours before he was expected. "Sir, we're 10 minutes out," his driver, Sung-ho, announced from the front seat. Jin-woo didn't respond. He simply stared out at the rain-slicked streets, watching the city blur past him. His empire stretched across these streets, invisible to most, but felt by everyone who mattered. The gambling dens, the protection networks, the legitimate businesses that served as fronts. All of it answered to him. At 43 years old, Kim Jin-woo had built something that most men only dreamed of. He had clawed his way from nothing, from the streets where his father had bled out in front of him when he was just 12 years old. Now he answered to no one. His word was law in the underworld of South Korea, and his name alone could make powerful men tremble. But power, he had learned, was a jealous master. It demanded constant vigilance. The moment you relaxed, the moment you trusted the wrong person, everything could crumble. The sedan pulled through the iron gates of his compound. His mansion sat on 3 acres of private land, surrounded by walls topped with security cameras and sensors. To the outside world, it was the home of a successful businessman. To those who knew better, it was a fortress. Jin-woo stepped out of the car before Sung-ho could open his door. The rain soaked his dark coat immediately, but he didn't care. He was already moving toward the house, his polished shoes splashing through puddles. Something was wrong. He could feel it in the air, in the unusual stillness that greeted him as he entered through the main doors. His security chief, Park Dae-ho, was supposed to be monitoring the entrance, but his station was empty. Jin-woo's jaw tightened. He moved through the grand foyer, past the towering ceilings and the artwork that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. His footsteps echoed on the marble floors as he passed through the living areas, each room immaculate, each surface gleaming under soft lighting. The staff knew better than to be out of position. Every person in this house had been carefully vetted, their backgrounds scrutinized, their loyalties tested. There were no mistakes in his home, no oversights. Yet something had slipped. He heard it then. A sound that made him freeze mid-step. Crack. It came from below, from the basement. Crack, crack. The rhythmic striking of wood against wood, or perhaps wood against flesh. The unmistakable sound of combat training. Jin-woo's blood ran cold. The basement was storage, nothing more. It held old furniture, archived documents, equipment that was no longer needed. His son had no reason to be down there. No one had reason to be down there. But as he stood at the top of the basement stairs, listening to those sounds, he knew with absolute certainty who was below. Ha-jun, his son, his only child. The boy who had been born without sight, who had spent his entire 16 years in darkness. The boy Jin-woo had sworn to protect from this world, from the violence and blood that defined his father's existence. Ha-jun was supposed to be in his room, studying with the private tutors Jin-woo employed. He was supposed to be safe, sheltered, unaware of the true nature of his father's business. Jin-woo descended the stairs slowly, each step deliberate. Bam. The sounds grew louder, more distinct. He could hear breathing now, controlled and measured. He could hear footwork, the shuffling of feet on concrete. And then he heard a voice. Calm, instructional. Again, your stance is too narrow. Feel the ground beneath you. Let it tell you where your weight should be. Zara, the new maid. She had been with them for only 3 months, hired to help with the household duties after their previous maid had retired. Her references had been impeccable. Her background check had revealed nothing concerning. A young woman from the countryside, orphaned at a young age, educated through a charity program. She had been quiet, efficient, almost invisible. Exactly what Jin Woo required from his staff. But that voice he was hearing now did not belong to a quiet maid. It carried authority, experience, the weight of someone who had spent years mastering whatever she was teaching. Jin Woo reached the basement door. Through the gap, he could see candlelight flickering, casting long shadows across the walls. He could see his son, Ha Jun, standing in the center of the open space. The boy held a wooden training stick in both hands, his stance wide, his blind eyes focused on nothing and everything at once. And there was Zara, circling him like a predator assessing its prey. She held her own training stick, her movements fluid and precise. Her hair, usually pinned back in the modest style of a servant, was loose and wild. Her plain uniform had been replaced by training clothes, dark and functional. This was not the woman Jin Woo had hired. "Your opponent won't announce their attack," Zara said, her voice low but clear. "You must listen. The air will tell you. The ground will tell you. Your body knows what to do if you trust it." Ha-jun nodded, his face set with concentration. There was no fear in his expression, no hesitation. He looked like someone who had been doing this for a long time. 3 months, Jinwoo thought. She had been in his house for 3 months. How much had she taught his son in that time? How long had this been going on behind his back? Zara moved. Her strike was fast, aimed at Ha-jun's left side. But the boy reacted instantly, bringing his stick up to block. The crack of wood against wood echoed through the basement. "Better," Zara said, "but your follow-through was weak. After you block, you must be ready to counter. Defense without offense is merely delay." Jin Woo had seen enough. He shoved the door open with enough force to send it crashing against the wall. The sound reverberated through the space, and for a moment, everything froze. Ha-jun's head turned toward the sound, his expression shifting from concentration to something else. Recognition. "Papa," he said, "you're home early." Jin Woo ignored him. His eyes were fixed on Zara, on this woman who had deceived him, who had somehow managed to slip past every safeguard he had put in place. "What is going on here?" The words came out low, dangerous, barely controlled. Zara did not flinch. She did not look away. She simply lowered her training stick and met his gaze with a calm that was almost infuriating. "Exactly what it looks like, Mr. Kim. I'm teaching your son to defend himself." Jin Woo stepped forward, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. "You have no right, no authority. He is my son." "He is," Zara agreed, "and he is also blind. In your world, Mr. Kim, that makes him a target. You know this better than anyone." The words hit him like a physical blow. He knew. Of course he knew. It was why he kept Ha-jun sheltered, why he surrounded the boy with security, why he had built walls around his son's life that were meant to be impenetrable. But walls could be breached. Security could fail. And what then? What would happen to Ha-jun when Jin Woo was no longer there to protect him? "Papa," Ha-jun said, stepping forward. The boy moved with a confidence that Jin Woo had never seen before, navigating the space as if he could see every obstacle. "Please listen to her." "Ha-jun, go to your room." Jin Woo's voice left no room for argument. "No." The word hung in the air between them. Jin Woo stared at his son, at this boy who had never defied him, who had always been obedient, who had always done exactly as he was told. "What did you say?" "I said no." Ha-jun's chin lifted, his blind eyes turned toward where his father's voice had come from. "I'm not a child anymore. I'm not helpless, and I won't pretend to be." Jinwoo felt something crack inside him. Anger, yes, but also something else, something that felt uncomfortably like fear. You don't know what you're saying. You don't understand the danger. I understand more than you think, Ha-jun interrupted. I know what you are, Papa. I've known for years. The late nights, the phone calls, the men who come and go. I'm blind, not stupid. Jinwoo's breath caught in his throat. He had been so careful, so meticulous in keeping his two lives separate. He had convinced himself that Ha-jun knew nothing, that the boy lived in blissful ignorance of his father's true nature. But Ha-jun had always been perceptive, more perceptive than Jinwoo had given him credit for. We need to talk, Zara said, her voice cutting through the tension. All of us. There are things you need to know, Mr. Kim, things that cannot wait any longer. Jinwoo turned his attention back to her. In the candlelight, he could see her more clearly now. The way she held herself, the steadiness in her eyes, the subtle scars on her hands that he had somehow missed before. Who are you? He demanded. And don't give me the story about the orphanage and the charity program. I want the truth. Zara set her training stick against the wall and crossed her arms. My name is Zara. That much is true. But you're right. I am not what my documents claim. She paused, seeming to choose her next words carefully. I was sent here by someone who has been watching your family for a long time. Someone who believes your son has potential that you cannot even begin to imagine. Sent by who? Someone from my organization. We don't have a name that would mean anything to you. We operate in the shadows, outside the boundaries of your world and the world of ordinary people. We have been training warriors for centuries. Jinwoo let out a harsh laugh. Centuries? You expect me to believe that? I expect you to listen. Zara's voice remained calm, but there was an edge to it now. Your son was born blind, yes, but that blindness is not a weakness. It is a gift. His other senses have developed in ways that are extraordinary. With the right training, he could become something remarkable, something that could protect him far better than your guards and your walls ever could. This is insane, Jinwoo said. You broke into my home under false pretenses. You trained my son without my consent. And now you're feeding me fairy tales about ancient warrior organizations? It's not a fairy tale, Papa. Ha-jun's voice was quiet but firm. Everything she says is true. I've felt it. When I train with her, I can sense things I never could before. I can hear heartbeats. I can feel the movement of air when someone approaches. I can tell when a person is lying just by the rhythm of their breathing. Jinwoo stared at his son, at this stranger who wore his boy's face. When had this happened? When had Ha-jun changed so completely without his knowledge? Show me, Jinwoo said. He didn't know why he said it. Perhaps he wanted to prove that this was all nonsense, that his son was being manipulated by a con artist with delusions of grandeur. Ha-jun nodded. He turned to face his father directly, even though he could not see him. You're standing by the door, he said, about 4 meters from me. Your heart rate is elevated. You're angry, but there's also fear beneath it. Fear for me, I think. You haven't eaten today. I can smell coffee on your breath, but nothing else. And your left shoulder is tense. An old injury, maybe? It bothers you when you're stressed. Jinwoo felt the color drain from his face. Everything the boy said was accurate, all of it, including the shoulder injury from an incident 15 years ago that Jinwoo had never discussed with anyone. How long? Jinwoo asked, his voice barely above a whisper. How long have you known? Zara started teaching me on my 2nd week here, Ha-jun said. But I've always been able to sense things. I just didn't know how to use it. She showed me. She helped me understand. Jinwoo looked at Zara again. The anger was still there, burning in his chest. But it was mixed now with something else. Curiosity, confusion, and a reluctant acknowledgement that perhaps this woman was not simply a threat to be eliminated. Why? He asked. Why my son? Why go to all this trouble? Zara's expression softened slightly. Because he was going to die. The words hit Jin Woo like a bullet to the chest. What are you talking about? There are people who know about Ha Jun's abilities, Zara said. People who see him as a threat, even though he has never done anything to them. They have been watching your family, waiting for the right moment. If I had not intervened, they would have made their move within the next 6 months. Who are these people? Give me names. I can't. Not yet. There's too much you don't know. Too much context you're missing. If I tell you now, you'll do something reckless, and that will only accelerate the timeline. Jin Woo stepped toward her, his jaw tight. You come into my house, train my son in secret, tell me there are people trying to kill him, and then refuse to give me the information I need to protect him? What kind of game are you playing? It's not a game, Mr. Kim. Zara met his gaze without flinching. I'm trying to keep your son alive. That's the only reason I'm here. Everything I've done, every lie I've told, has been in service of that goal. And why should I believe you? Because if I wanted to harm Ha Jun, I could have done it 100 times over. I've been alone with him almost every day for 3 months. If I were an assassin, he would already be dead. The logic was cold, but Jin Woo couldn't argue with it. She was right. If she had been sent to kill Ha Jun, she had been given countless opportunities. Instead, she had been teaching him to fight, to defend himself, to harness abilities that Jin Woo hadn't even known existed. Papa! Ha Jun moved toward him, his steps sure despite the darkness of his world. He stopped just in front of Jin Woo and reached out, his hand finding his father's arm. I know you're scared. I know this is a lot to process. But Zara isn't the enemy. She's been preparing me for something that's coming, something neither of us can avoid. Jin Woo looked down at his son's hand on his arm. The boy's fingers were calloused now, roughened from weeks of training. Such a small detail, but it spoke volumes about how much had changed without Jin Woo's knowledge. What's coming? Jin Woo asked, his voice rough. Ha Jun turned his blind eyes upward, as if looking at his father's face. I don't know yet. Zara says I'm not ready to know, but whatever it is, I won't face it defenseless. Not anymore. Jin Woo looked from his son to Zara, from this boy who was no longer a boy to this woman who was so much more than a maid. His world, the world he had built with blood and iron, had just shifted beneath his feet. Everything he thought he knew about his son, about his household, about the threats that surrounded him, had been wrong. And the worst part was that he couldn't simply make it go away. He couldn't kill Zara and pretend this had never happened, not when his son looked at him with such conviction, not when the alternative might be Ha Jun's death. You will tell me everything, Jin Woo said finally, his voice hard. Every detail, every name you know, every threat you're aware of. I don't care about your organization's protocols or whatever rules you operate under. This is my son, and I will not be kept in the dark any longer. Zara considered his words for a long moment. Then she nodded. Very well, but not here, not tonight. There are too many ears in this house, and some of them belong to people you think you trust. Jin Woo's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? I mean that your security has been compromised. At least one person in your inner circle is reporting to the people who want Ha Jun dead. I don't know who yet. I've been trying to identify them, but they're careful. A traitor. In his own house. In the organization he had built from nothing. Jin Woo felt the familiar cold fury settle over him. This was something he understood. Betrayal. Enemies within. These were problems he knew how to solve. Tomorrow, he said, we'll go somewhere secure, just the 3 of us, and you will tell me everything. Zara nodded. Tomorrow. She picked up her training stick and handed it to Ha Jun. That's enough for tonight. You should rest. Tomorrow will be a difficult day. Ha Jun took the stick, his expression thoughtful. He turned to his father one more time. Papa, I know you're angry. I know you feel like I went behind your back, but I had to. If I had asked permission, you would have said no, and I couldn't risk that. Not when so much is at stake. Jinwoo looked at his son and saw, for the first time, the man he was becoming. Not the helpless blind child who needed protection. Not the sheltered boy who knew nothing of the real world. But someone stronger. Someone who had been forced to grow up in secret, in the shadows of his own home. "We'll talk more tomorrow," Jinwoo said. It was all he could manage. He turned and walked back up the stairs, leaving the basement behind. But as he climbed, he could still hear Zara's voice drifting up from below. "You did well tonight, Ha-jun. Your father will come to understand. Give him time." "I hope so," Ha-jun replied. "He's all I have." Jinwoo paused at the top of the stairs, those words echoing in his mind. His son thought he was all Ha-jun had, but the truth was far more complicated. Ha-jun had abilities that Jinwoo couldn't comprehend. He had a teacher who had been preparing him for a war Jinwoo didn't even know existed. And somewhere out there, enemies were waiting, watching, planning. Jinwoo closed the basement door and stood in the silence of his home. The mansion that had always felt like a fortress now felt like a cage. Every shadow seemed to hold secrets. Every corner might hide a traitor. Tomorrow he would get answers. Tomorrow he would understand what his son had become and what forces were moving against them. But tonight, Kim Jinwoo stood alone in the darkness of his own home and realized for the first time in years that he was afraid. Not for himself. He had stopped fearing death long ago. He was afraid for Ha-jun. For this remarkable boy who had learned to fight in secret, who had developed abilities that defied explanation, who was at the center of something far larger than a mafia empire. And Jinwoo knew, with the same instinct that had brought him home early today, that nothing would ever be the same again. Jinwoo did not sleep that night. He sat in his study on the second floor, a glass of whiskey untouched on the desk before him. The rain had stopped sometime around midnight, leaving the world outside silent and still. But inside his mind, a storm raged without end. Every few minutes his thoughts returned to the basement, to the sound of wood striking wood, to his son moving with purpose and precision, to Zara standing there with the calm confidence of someone who had nothing to fear. Who was she? Where had she really come from? And how had she managed to slip past every security measure he had put in place? Jinwoo had built his empire on paranoia. He trusted no one completely. He verified every piece of information, cross-checked every reference, investigated every person who came into contact with his family. And yet this woman had walked into his home with a fabricated history and had spent 3 months training his son without anyone noticing. It was unacceptable. It was dangerous. And it made Jinwoo question everything he thought he knew about the security of his own household. When dawn finally broke over Seoul, painting the sky in shades of gray and pale gold, Jinwoo made his decision. He would not wait until they could go somewhere secure. He needed answers now, and he would get them. He left his study and walked through the quiet mansion. The staff would not be awake for another hour. The security team was in the middle of their shift change. It was the perfect time for a private conversation. Jinwoo found Zara in the kitchen, already dressed and preparing tea. She looked up as he entered, her expression unreadable. "You didn't sleep," she observed. "Neither did you." Zara poured hot water into a ceramic pot. "Sleep is a luxury. I learned long ago to function without it when necessary." Jinwoo crossed the kitchen and stopped on the opposite side of the counter from her. The marble surface stretched between them like a battlefield. "We're talking now," he said. "Not tomorrow. Not at some secure location. Now." Zara set down the kettle and met his gaze. "Ha-jun should be present. This concerns him more than anyone. Ha-jun is 16 years old. He is a child. He does not get to make decisions about his own safety. With respect, Mr. Kim, you stopped being able to make those decisions for him the moment he started training with me. He is no longer the helpless boy you remember. He is becoming something else entirely. Jin Woo slammed his palm against the counter. The sound echoed through the empty kitchen. That is exactly the problem, he said, his voice low and dangerous. You have taken my son and turned him into something without my knowledge or consent. You have endangered him with this reckless training. Do you have any idea what could happen if my enemies learned that Ha Jun was being prepared for combat? They would see him as a threat. They would target him. Zara remained perfectly still, absorbing his anger like water absorbing a stone. Your enemies already target him, Mr. Kim. That is what I have been trying to tell you. His blindness makes him vulnerable in their eyes, a weak point in your armor, something they can exploit to hurt you. Training him does not create danger. It prepares him to survive the danger that already exists. And who gave you the right to make that judgment? Who sent you here? You mentioned an organization last night. I want a name. Zara was silent for a long moment. Then she turned and walked to the kitchen window, looking out at the garden beyond. I will tell you who I am, she said finally, but you must understand that what I share cannot leave this room. If the wrong people learn that I am still alive, it will put Ha Jun in even greater danger. Jin Woo's eyes narrowed. Still alive? What are you talking about? Zara turned back to face him. In the pale morning light, she looked different somehow, older, harder. The mask of the quiet servant had fallen away completely, revealing the warrior beneath. Have you ever heard of the Black Rose? Jin Woo felt something cold settle in his stomach. Of course he had heard of the Black Rose. Everyone in his world had heard of her. She had been a legend in the underground fighting circuits, a woman who had appeared out of nowhere and defeated opponents twice her size with techniques no one had ever seen before. She had fought in Tokyo, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Seoul, winning every match and refusing every offer to align with the criminal organizations that ran those circuits. And then, 7 years ago, she had vanished. Some said she had been killed by the Yakuza for refusing to throw a fight. Others claimed she had simply disappeared. Tired of the violence and the attention, there were dozens of theories, but no one knew the truth. The Black Rose is dead, Jin Woo said slowly. Everyone in the underworld knows that. The Black Rose retired, Zara corrected. There is a difference. I made certain that everyone believed I was dead because it was the only way to escape that life. I was tired of fighting for entertainment, tired of being a spectacle for men who saw me as a commodity. So I faked my death and joined an organization that valued my skills for something more meaningful. Jin Woo stared at her, his mind racing to process this information. If she was telling the truth, then the woman standing before him was one of the most dangerous fighters in the world, someone who had taken on champions and criminals and walked away undefeated. And she had been living in his home for 3 months, teaching his son. Why? He asked. Why come here? Why Ha Jun? Zara's expression softened slightly. Because I was given a mission. There are people who have been watching your son for years, Mr. Kim, not your enemies. Something else, something older. They recognized his potential before he was even born. Potential for what? For becoming one of us. A guardian, a protector. Someone who can sense things that ordinary people cannot. Who can fight in ways that defy conventional understanding. Ha Jun's blindness is not a limitation. It is an enhancement. Without sight to distract him, his other senses have developed to an extraordinary degree. He can hear a heartbeat from across a room. He can feel the displacement of air when someone moves. He can read the intent of an opponent through the rhythm of their breathing. Jin Woo thought of the demonstration in the basement, Ha Jun describing his father's physical state with perfect accuracy, the old shoulder injury that no one knew about, the coffee on his breath, the fear beneath the anger. You're saying my son has some kind of supernatural ability? I am saying your son has trained his natural abilities to a supernatural degree. There is nothing magical about it. Just focus, discipline, and the right teacher. Zara paused. He is remarkable, Mr. Kim. I have trained many students over the years, but I have never encountered anyone with his raw potential. If he continues on this path, he could become something truly extraordinary. Jinwoo turned away, running a hand through his hair. This was too much, too fast. His carefully ordered world was crumbling around him, and he didn't know how to stop it. You should have told me, he said, his voice rough. From the beginning, you should have come to me and explained what you wanted. I would have listened. Would you? Zara's voice was gentle but skeptical. If a stranger had come to you and said she wanted to train your blind son to be a warrior, would you really have listened? Or would you have thrown her out and increased your security? Jinwoo didn't answer. They both knew what he would have done. I did what I had to do, Zara continued. I gave Hajun a choice. I told him who I was, what I could teach him, and what the risks were, and he chose to learn. He chose to become stronger. That was his decision, not mine. He's a child. He doesn't get to make decisions like that. He is 16. In many parts of the world, he would be considered a man. And in your world, Mr. Kim, age means nothing. There are 14-year-olds running drugs for your competitors. There are 15-year-olds who have already killed. Ha-jun may be blind, but he is not innocent. He has grown up in the shadow of your empire. He knows what violence means, even if he has never experienced it himself. Jinwoo closed his eyes. She was right. He hated that she was right, but he couldn't deny it. Ha-jun had grown up in this world, surrounded by men who carried weapons and spoke in coded language about territories and rivals and eliminations. The boy might not have seen the blood that stained his father's hands, but he had heard enough to understand. You mentioned enemies last night, Jinwoo said, opening his eyes. You said there are people who want Hajun dead. Who are they? Zara hesitated. This is where things become complicated. I don't care how complicated it is. I need to know who is threatening my son. They call themselves the Order of the Crimson Gate. They are an ancient organization, older than most governments, dedicated to identifying and eliminating people like Hajun, people with enhanced abilities, people who could threaten their power. I've never heard of them. You wouldn't have. They operate in the spaces between your world and mine. They have influence in governments, in criminal organizations, in corporations. They are everywhere and nowhere, and they have been watching your family for a long time. Jinwoo felt the walls closing in around him. He had thought he understood the threats that surrounded him. He had thought he knew his enemies. But this was something else entirely. Something beyond his experience, beyond his control. How did they find out about Hajun? His abilities began manifesting when he was young, small things at first. Knowing when someone was approaching before they announced themselves, sensing danger before it arrived. These incidents were noticed, recorded, analyzed. By the time I was assigned to protect him, the Order had already marked him as a potential threat. Protect him? Jinwoo seized on the word. Is that what you're doing? Protecting him? Yes. That is my primary mission. Training him is part of that protection. If the Order comes for him, he needs to be able to defend himself. I cannot be with him every moment of every day. He must be capable of surviving on his own if necessary. Jinwoo was silent for a long moment, processing everything she had told him. The legendary fighter who had faked her death. The ancient Order hunting people with abilities. His son at the center of it all, being prepared for a war that Jinwoo hadn't even known existed. It was absurd. It was impossible. And yet, somehow, he believed her. Why didn't your organization approach me directly? He asked. If you knew about the threat, if you wanted to protect Hajun, why go through all this deception? Because we didn't know if we could trust you. Zara's voice was matter-of-fact. You are a powerful man, Mr. Kim. You have connections throughout the criminal underworld. Any of those connections could lead back to the Order. We needed to observe you, to understand your loyalties, before we could reveal ourselves. And now? Do you trust me now? Zara studied him carefully. I trust that you love your son, that you would do anything to protect him. Whether that means you can be trusted with the full truth remains to be seen. Jin Woo let out a bitter laugh. The full truth? You mean there's more you're not telling me? There is always more, Mr. Kim. But for now, what I have told you is enough. You know who I am. You know what I am training Ha Jun for. You know that there are enemies watching, waiting for an opportunity to strike. What you do with that knowledge is up to you. Jin Woo walked to the window and looked out at the garden. The first rays of sunlight were beginning to touch the carefully manicured trees and shrubs. Everything looked peaceful, normal, a far cry from the chaos churning inside him. What do you need from me? He asked finally. Your trust, your cooperation, and your discretion. If the Order learns that I am here, that Ha Jun is being trained, they will accelerate their plans. We need time. Time for Ha Jun to develop his abilities. Time for me to identify the traitor in your organization. Time to prepare for what is coming. The traitor. Jin Woo turned back to face her. You mentioned that last night. Someone in my inner circle is reporting to these people. Yes. I don't know who yet. They are careful, skilled at hiding their true loyalties. But the information is leaking. Details about Ha Jun's schedule, his routines, his vulnerabilities. Someone close to you is feeding it to the Order. Jin Woo's hands clenched into fists. The thought of a traitor in his organization was almost worse than the threat itself. He had built his empire on loyalty. Every person in his inner circle had been tested, vetted, proven. The idea that one of them had been deceiving him all along made his blood boil. I will find them, he said. I will find them, and I will make them pay for their betrayal. Not yet, Zara's voice was firm. If you move against them now, we lose our advantage. The Order will know that we are aware of their surveillance. They will change their plans, adapt their approach. We need to identify the traitor and use them. Feed them false information. Lead the Order where we want them to go. It went against every instinct Jin Woo had. He wanted to tear through his organization, interrogate everyone, find the rat and make an example of them. But he understood the logic of what Zara was saying. In war, information was more valuable than vengeance. Fine, he said through gritted teeth. We do it your way, for now. But when the time comes, the traitor is mine. Zara nodded. Agreed. The sound of footsteps on the stairs made them both turn. A moment later, Ha Jun appeared in the kitchen doorway. He was dressed for the day, his dark hair still damp from a shower, his blind eyes aimed in their general direction. I heard voices, he said. I thought you were going to talk somewhere secure today. Plans changed, Jin Woo replied. He looked at his son, really looked at him, and tried to see what Zara saw. The potential, the power, the warrior in waiting. Ha Jun moved into the kitchen with the same confidence he had displayed in the basement. His hand brushed against the counter, a subtle touch that helped him orient himself. But his steps never faltered. He knew exactly where he was going. Is everything okay? Ha Jun asked. Jin Woo glanced at Zara, then back at his son. Nothing was okay. Everything had changed. The world he thought he knew had revealed itself to be far more dangerous and strange than he had ever imagined. But as he watched Ha Jun navigate the kitchen with ease, as he remembered the boy's demonstration of his abilities, Jin Woo felt something shift inside him. Not acceptance, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. His son was not helpless. His son was not weak. His son was becoming something that Jin Woo could not fully comprehend. And maybe, just maybe, That was not a bad thing. Your father and I have reached an understanding, Zara said. He will allow your training to continue. Ha-Jun's face lit up with a smile that Jin-Woo had not seen in years, pure, unguarded joy. Really? Papa, do you mean it? Jin-Woo walked to his son and placed a hand on his shoulder. The boy's muscles were firmer than he remembered, developed from weeks of training. Another reminder of how much had changed without his knowledge. I mean it, Jin-Woo said. But from now on, there are no more secrets between us. Anything that concerns you, anything that concerns your training, I want to know about it. Understood? Ha-Jun nodded eagerly. Yes, Papa. I promise. Jin-Woo squeezed his son's shoulder, then looked over at Zara. The legendary Black Rose. The protector sent by a mysterious organization. The woman who had turned his world upside down in a single night. This doesn't mean I trust you, he said to her. You've earned a chance to prove yourself, nothing more. If I find out you're deceiving me, if I discover that anything you've told me is a lie, there will be consequences. Zara inclined her head slightly. I would expect nothing less. Jin-Woo released his son and walked toward the kitchen door. He paused at the threshold and looked back at the two of them, the warrior and the boy she was shaping into something new. Train him well, Jin-Woo said. Make him strong. Make him ready for whatever is coming. Then he walked out, leaving them to their work. But as he made his way back to his study, Jin-Woo's mind was already churning. A traitor in his organization, an ancient order hunting his son, a legendary fighter hiding in his home. He had spent decades building his empire, learning to navigate the treacherous waters of the criminal underworld. He had faced rivals, assassins, police investigations, and government crackdowns. He had survived it all through cunning, ruthlessness, and an unwillingness to ever back down. Now he faced something new, something he didn't fully understand. But Kim Jin-Woo had never let ignorance stop him before. He would learn, he would adapt, he would find the traitor in his midst and the enemies lurking in the shadows, and when the time came, he would protect his son with every resource at his command. Because in the end, that was what mattered, not his empire, not his power, not his reputation, just Ha-Jun, the boy who had been born into darkness and was now learning to turn that darkness into strength. 3 days passed after Jin-Woo's confrontation with Zara in the kitchen. During those 3 days, he watched, he observed, he tried to reconcile the quiet maid he had hired with the legendary fighter she claimed to be. Zara continued her duties as if nothing had changed. She cleaned, she cooked, she attended to the household tasks with the same efficient silence she had always displayed. To anyone else in the mansion, she was exactly what she appeared to be, a humble servant doing her job. But Jin-Woo saw her differently now. He noticed the way she moved, the economy of motion in every step, the constant awareness in her eyes. He watched how she positioned herself in rooms, always with her back to a wall, always with a clear view of every entrance. He observed the subtle way she tracked the movements of his security team, cataloging their patterns, noting their weaknesses. She was a predator hiding among sheep, and she had been doing it so well that no one had suspected a thing. On the 4th day, Jin-Woo found himself standing outside the basement door once again. It was late afternoon, and the sounds of training drifted up from below. But this time, instead of anger, he felt something closer to curiosity. He descended the stairs quietly, not wanting to interrupt. The basement had been transformed since his last visit. Training mats now covered the concrete floor. Wooden weapons of various sizes hung on the walls. Candles provided soft, flickering light that cast dancing shadows across the space. Ha-Jun stood in the center of the room, blindfolded. The irony was not lost on Jin-Woo, his blind son wearing a blindfold. But he understood the purpose now. It was about focus. About eliminating even the faint light sensitivity that Ha-Jun possessed, and forcing him to rely entirely on his other senses. Zara circled him slowly, her footsteps deliberately silent. She held a padded training stick, and every few seconds she would strike without warning. Sometimes from the left, sometimes from the right, sometimes high, sometimes low, and Ha-jun blocked every single blow. Jin-woo watched in silence as his son moved with a fluidity that seemed impossible. The boy's reactions were instantaneous, his body responding to threats before they fully materialized. It was as if he could see the attacks coming despite his blindness. "Your left side is still weaker," Zara said, stepping back. "You favor your right. A skilled opponent will notice this and exploit it." "I know," Ha-jun replied, lowering his guard. "I can feel the imbalance. It's like my body wants to turn that way. We will work on it. Symmetry is essential. You cannot afford blind spots." Zara paused, then added, "No pun intended." Ha-jun laughed, a genuine sound that Jin-woo had not heard in a long time. When had his son become so comfortable with his condition? When had he stopped treating his blindness like a curse and started treating it like just another aspect of who he was? "Papa is here," Ha-jun said suddenly, turning his blindfolded face toward the stairs. Zara glanced over her shoulder, unsurprised. "I know. He's been standing there for the past 5 minutes." Jin-woo stepped forward into the light. "I didn't want to interrupt." "You're not interrupting," Ha-jun said, pulling off the blindfold. His sightless eyes found his father's general direction with uncanny accuracy. "We were just finishing the afternoon session." Jin-woo looked around the transformed basement. "You've made quite a few changes down here." "Necessary modifications," Zara replied. "Proper training requires proper equipment." "And you paid for all this how?" "The organization provides resources. Everything Ha-jun needs is covered." Jin-woo filed that information away. The mysterious organization had money, influence, and the ability to move equipment into his home without his knowledge. It was both reassuring and deeply unsettling. "I want to talk," Jin-woo said, his eyes on Zara. "Just the two of us. Ha-jun, go upstairs and get something to eat." Ha-jun hesitated, clearly wanting to stay. But after a moment, he nodded and made his way to the stairs. His movements were confident, his steps sure. He navigated the space like someone who could see every obstacle, every piece of equipment, every shadow. When the sound of his footsteps faded, Jin-woo turned to Zara. "You told me you were the Black Rose. You told me about the Order of the Crimson Gate and the threat to my son. But you didn't tell me everything. I want the full story, your story. How did you become what you are?" Zara was quiet for a long moment. She walked to one of the training mats and sat down, crossing her legs beneath her. After a moment's hesitation, Jin-woo joined her, lowering himself to the mat with less grace but equal determination. "I was born in a small village in the Philippines," Zara began, her voice taking on a distant quality. "My mother died giving birth to me. My father was a fisherman who drank away his grief until there was nothing left of him. By the time I was 7, I was living on the streets of Manila, stealing to survive." Jin-woo said nothing. He knew what it meant to come from nothing. He knew the desperation of poverty, the constant hunger, the fear that never quite went away. "When I was 10, I was taken by a man who ran a child fighting ring. Not the organized circuits you know about. Something smaller, dirtier. Children fighting children while grown men placed bets and drank beer." Zara's expression remained calm, but Jin-woo could see the tension in her shoulders, the tightness around her eyes. "I fought for 3 years in that ring. I learned quickly that victory meant food and defeat meant pain. So I learned to win, every time. No matter what." "How did you escape?" "I didn't escape. I was rescued." Zara met his eyes. "A woman from the organization found me. She had been tracking the fighting ring, looking for children with potential. She saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. She took me away from that place and brought me to a training compound in the mountains of Japan." The organization that sent you here. Yes. They don't have a formal name. They've existed for centuries, moving through history, identifying and training people with exceptional abilities. Fighters, strategists, spies, people who operate in the spaces between normal society and the shadows. Jin Woo leaned forward. And they trained you to become the Black Rose? They trained me to survive. The Black Rose came later. Zara's lips curved in a faint, humorless smile. By the time I was 18, I had mastered 6 different martial arts. I could fight with weapons or without. I could read an opponent's intentions through their breathing, their posture, the micro-expressions on their face. I was, according to my teachers, one of the most naturally gifted students they had ever encountered. Naturally gifted, Jinwoo repeated, like Ha-jun. Similar, but different. My gifts are physical, speed, reflexes, an intuitive understanding of combat. Ha-jun's gifts are sensory. He perceives the world in ways that even I cannot fully comprehend. In some ways, his potential exceeds my own. Jinwoo absorbed this information, trying to reconcile it with the boy he had raised for 16 years, the quiet child who needed help navigating unfamiliar rooms, the teenager who had seemed so fragile, so dependent. If you were so valuable to this organization, why did you leave? Why become the Black Rose? Zara's expression darkened. I didn't leave by choice. When I was 22, there was a schism within the organization. A faction believed that our skills should be used more aggressively, that we should stop hiding in the shadows and start shaping the world according to our own vision. Others, including my mentor, believed we should continue as we always had, operating quietly, protecting those who needed protection without seeking power for ourselves. A civil war. Of sorts. It was brief but brutal. My mentor was killed. Many others I cared about died. I was forced to flee, to disappear, to find a new identity. The underground fighting circuits were the only world I knew outside the organization, so I entered them, using skills I had been trained never to reveal publicly. And you won. Every fight. Every fight. For 5 years I moved from city to city, competition to competition. I fought in basements and warehouses, in private clubs and abandoned factories. I defeated opponents who outweighed me by 100 pounds. I humiliated champions who had never known defeat. And with each victory, my legend grew. Jinwoo remembered the stories, the Black Rose appearing from nowhere, disappearing just as quickly. The woman who moved like water, who struck like lightning, who showed no mercy and asked for none. Why did you stop? Because I was tired. Zara's voice softened. Tired of the violence. Tired of the attention. Tired of being a spectacle for men who saw me as nothing more than entertainment. And because the faction that had destroyed my home began to take notice of me. They sent recruiters, then threats, then assassins. I knew that if I continued, they would eventually succeed in either capturing or killing me. So you faked your death. It wasn't difficult. A body with the right height and build, enough facial damage to prevent identification, a few planted clues to sell the story. Within a month, the Black Rose was officially dead, and I was free to disappear. And the organization? The one that originally trained you? They found me 2 years later. The faction that had caused the schism had been defeated, the organization rebuilt. They offered me a chance to return, to use my skills for something meaningful again. I accepted. Zara paused. That was 5 years ago. Since then, I have been doing what I do best, protecting people who need protection, training students who show exceptional potential. Jinwoo was silent, processing the story she had told him. A child soldier turned legendary fighter, turned protector. A woman who had survived things that would have broken most people and emerged stronger for it. Why Ha-jun? He asked finally. Of all the students you could have chosen, all the people you could have protected, why my son? Zara looked at him with something like compassion in her eyes. Because he reminds me of myself, a child born into circumstances beyond his control, fighting to survive in a world that sees him as weak, but also because his potential is extraordinary. I have trained many students, Mr. Kim. I have never encountered anyone with his natural abilities. His blindness. Yes. Most people see it as a disability, but for Hajun, it is an advantage. Without sight, his brain has rewired itself to process sensory information in ways that sighted people cannot comprehend. He can hear things that others cannot hear. He can feel vibrations in the air, in the ground, in the spaces between objects. With proper training, he will be able to perceive the world more completely than anyone with perfect vision. Jin Woo thought of his son blocking every blow in the training session, moving with confidence through the basement, describing his father's physical state with perfect accuracy. "Show me," he said suddenly. Zara raised an eyebrow. "Show you what?" "Show me what he can do. Not the training exercises, not the demonstrations. Show me what he's really capable of." Zara considered the request for a long moment. Then she nodded and rose to her feet. "Wait here." She disappeared up the stairs, leaving Jin Woo alone in the basement. He looked around at the training equipment, the weapons, the mats. This had become his son's secret world, a place where Hajun had been transforming himself while Jin Woo remained oblivious. 10 minutes later, Zara returned with Hajun. The boy's expression was curious but not anxious. "Papa wants to see what you can do," Zara explained. "A real demonstration. Are you ready?" Hajun nodded. "What do you want me to do?" Zara turned to Jin Woo. "Tell him to do something. Anything. Test his abilities however you like." Jin Woo stood, thinking. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small coin. Without warning, he tossed it into the air. Hajun's hand shot up and caught it before Jin Woo even registered the movement. "A coin," Hajun said, running his fingers over its surface. 501, minted in 2019, based on the wear pattern. Jin Woo stared at his son, speechless. "The sound," Hajun explained. "The weight of it moving through the air, the way it displaced the atmosphere as it traveled. I can track objects by the disturbances they create." Jin Woo took the coin back, his mind racing. He walked to the far side of the basement, putting as much distance between himself and Hajun as possible. "How many fingers am I holding up?" he asked, raising 3 fingers. Hajun smiled. "That's not fair, I can't see your fingers, but I can tell you that you're standing approximately 8 meters from me, that your heart rate has increased since the coin catch, and that you're holding your arm at roughly a 45-degree angle." Jin Woo lowered his arm slowly. "How?" "I can hear the fabric of your sleeve move when you raise your arm. The sound is different depending on the angle. As for your heart rate, I can hear it. It's faster than normal. You're excited. Or maybe scared." "I'm not scared." "Then excited." Hajun's blind eyes seemed to look directly at him. "Papa, I know this is a lot to take in, but I'm not helpless anymore. I haven't been helpless for a while, I just didn't have the training to use what I had." Jin Woo walked back across the basement, stopping in front of his son. He reached out and placed a hand on Hajun's shoulder. "All these years," he said quietly, "I thought I was protecting you by keeping you sheltered, by hiding you from the world I live in. I thought if I kept you innocent, kept you unaware, you would be safe. I know, Papa. But I was wrong." The words were difficult to say, but Jin Woo forced them out. "I was treating you like you were broken, like your blindness made you less, and all this time, you've been becoming something I never imagined." Hajun's hand came up to cover his father's. "You were trying to protect me. I understand that. But Zara showed me another way. She showed me that I don't have to be protected. I can protect myself. And maybe someday, I can protect others too." Jin Woo looked at Zara, standing quietly to the side, watching the exchange with unreadable eyes. "You did this," he said to her. You gave him this. I gave him nothing, Zara replied. The ability was always there. I simply taught him how to access it. Ha-Jun did the rest himself. Jin-Woo turned back to his son. For 16 years, he had seen Ha-Jun as a victim of circumstance, a boy cursed with blindness who needed constant protection. He had built walls around his son, hired security teams, controlled every aspect of his environment, and none of it had mattered, because the protection Ha-Jun truly needed was not the kind that came from walls and guards. It was the kind that came from within. Teach him everything, Jin-Woo said to Zara, his voice rough with emotion. Everything you know. Everything you can give him. I don't care how long it takes or what it costs. I want him to be ready for whatever is coming. Zara inclined her head. That is what I intend to do. Jin-Woo pulled his son into an embrace, something he had not done in years. Ha-Jun stiffened for a moment, surprised, then relaxed into the hug. I'm sorry, Jin-Woo murmured. I'm sorry I didn't see you clearly. It's okay, Papa. Ha-Jun's voice was muffled against his father's shoulder. You see me now. That's what matters. They stood there for a long moment, father and son, bridging a gap that Jin-Woo hadn't even known existed. When they finally separated, Jin-Woo turned to leave the basement. At the foot of the stairs, he paused and looked back. Zara, thank you. It was not an easy thing for him to say. Kim Jin-Woo did not thank people. He did not show gratitude or vulnerability, but this moment required it. Zara nodded once, accepting the words without fanfare. Jin-Woo climbed the stairs, leaving the basement behind. But as he walked through his mansion, everything looked different. The walls he had built to keep the world out now felt like walls that had kept his son trapped. The security he had relied on now seemed hollow, insufficient. His son was not helpless. His son was not broken. His son was becoming a warrior, and Jin-Woo had almost missed it entirely. He made his way to his study and sat down behind his desk. The files he had been reviewing that morning now seemed trivial. Business dealings, territory disputes, financial reports, all the machinery of his empire, humming along as it always did. But Jin-Woo's mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about the Order of the Crimson Gate and the threat they posed. He was thinking about the traitors somewhere in his organization, feeding information to his enemies. He was thinking about Zara, the legendary Black Rose, living under his roof and training his son for a conflict that Jin-Woo was only beginning to understand. And he was thinking about Ha-Jun, the boy who had grown up in darkness and learned to turn that darkness into power. For the first time in many years, Kim Jin-Woo felt something he rarely allowed himself to feel. Hope. The world was more dangerous than he had known. The threats were greater, the enemies more numerous. But his son was not defenseless. Ha-Jun was becoming something extraordinary, and with the right guidance, he might just survive whatever was coming. Jin-Woo picked up his phone and dialed a number he had not used in years. It rang 3 times before a voice answered. Mr. Kim, I wasn't expecting to hear from you. I need information, Jin-Woo said. Everything you can find about an organization called the Order of the Crimson Gate. Historical records, current members, known operations, everything. There was a pause on the other end of the line. That's a dangerous request. The people who ask about that organization tend to disappear. Then I suggest you be discreet. I'll pay triple your usual rate. Another pause. I'll see what I can find. But Mr. Kim, whatever you're getting into, be careful. There are forces in this world that even men like you cannot control. Jin-Woo ended the call without responding. He set the phone down on his desk and stared out the window at the city beyond. Forces he could not control. Enemies he could not see. A son he was only beginning to understand. The game had changed. The board had expanded beyond anything Jin-Woo had imagined. But he had not built his empire by backing down from challenges. He would learn. He would adapt. He would find the traitor, identify the threat, and protect his family by whatever means necessary. And when the Order of the Crimson Gate finally made their move, they would find that Kim Jin-woo was not the easy target they expected. They would find a father who was willing to burn the world to keep his son safe. 2 weeks had passed since Jin-woo's conversation with his contact about the Order of the Crimson Gate. The information that came back was sparse but troubling. The order had existed for over 400 years, originating somewhere in Eastern Europe before spreading across the globe. They had connections to governments, intelligence agencies, and criminal organizations on every continent. And they were ruthless in eliminating anyone they deemed a threat to their vision of order. Jin-woo had read the files 3 times, committing every detail to memory. But the information only raised more questions. How had they identified Ha-jun? What specifically made his son a target, and how close were they to making their move? He pushed these thoughts aside as he descended the basement stairs. It had become a ritual over the past 2 weeks, watching Ha-jun train from the shadows of the stairwell. Zara knew he was there, of course. She always knew. But she never acknowledged his presence, and Jin-woo preferred it that way. Today's session was different from the ones he had observed before. Ha-jun stood in the center of the training area, stripped to the waist. His lean frame showed the beginnings of muscle definition that had not been there a month ago. Sweat glistened on his skin as he faced not one opponent, but 3. The training dummies were mounted on rotating bases, each one rigged with a system of pulleys and weights that Zara controlled from across the room. At random intervals, she would release a mechanism and one of the dummies would swing toward Ha-jun with a padded arm extended. The attacks came without pattern, sometimes 1 at a time, sometimes 2 in quick succession, sometimes all 3 at once, converging on Ha-jun from different angles. And Ha-jun met each one. His movements were fluid, economical. He ducked under a swing from his left, simultaneously blocking a strike from behind with his forearm. A third dummy spun toward him and he sidestepped, using the momentum of his dodge to position himself for a counterattack that would have been devastating against a real opponent. "Good," Zara called out. "But you hesitated on the 3rd deflection. Your body knew what to do. Your mind got in the way." Ha-jun wiped sweat from his forehead. "I was thinking about the angle, trying to calculate the trajectory." "Stop calculating. Your senses have already done the work. Trust them." Jin-woo watched as Zara reset the mechanism, and the exercise began again. This time, Ha-jun moved without hesitation. His responses were immediate, instinctive. He flowed between the attacks, like water around stones, never where the strikes expected him to be. Something tightened in Jin-woo's chest as he watched. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was something he could not quite name. A mixture of emotions that left him unsettled. When had his son become this person? When had the quiet boy who needed help navigating the house transformed into this capable young man? The training session continued for another hour. Jin-woo remained on the stairs, watching in silence. He observed the way Zara adjusted her instructions based on Ha-jun's performance, pushing him harder when he succeeded, offering guidance when he struggled. There was a rhythm to their interaction, a shorthand that had developed over months of working together. Finally, Zara called an end to the session. Ha-jun grabbed a towel and dried his face, his breathing heavy but controlled. "You're getting faster," Zara said. "Another few weeks of this, and you'll be able to handle live opponents." Ha-jun smiled. "Live opponents? You mean actual people trying to hit me?" "That is generally what training partners do, yes." "I'm ready now. I can feel it." Zara shook her head. "You're not ready. You're improving, but there's a difference between dummies on a mechanism and a thinking opponent who adapts to your movements. We'll get there. Be patient." Ha-jun's smile faded slightly, replaced by a look of determination. "Fine, but I want to push harder. I can take it." "I know you can. That's not the concern." Zara glanced toward the stairs, her eyes meeting Jin-woo's for a brief moment. "The concern is pushing too fast and developing bad habits. Speed without precision is useless. Strength without control is dangerous. Jin Woo stepped out of the shadows and descended the remaining stairs. Ha-jun turned toward the sound of his footsteps. Papa, I didn't know you were watching. I've been watching for a while. Jin Woo stopped at the edge of the training mat. You've improved. The simple words carried weight. Jin Woo was not a man who gave compliments freely. Ha-jun seemed to understand this, his expression softening. Thank you. Zara is a good teacher. She is. Jin Woo looked at Zara. I need to speak with my son alone. Zara nodded without argument. She gathered a few items from the training area and headed for the stairs. As she passed Jin Woo, she spoke quietly. He's doing well. Better than I expected at this stage. Then she was gone, leaving father and son alone in the basement. Jin Woo looked around the space, taking in the equipment, the weapons on the walls, the evidence of months of secret training. When he finally spoke, his voice was measured. I've been thinking about what you said, about how you've known what I am for years. Ha-jun remained still, waiting. I thought I was protecting you by keeping you separate from my work. I thought if I could maintain a wall between the two parts of my life, you would never have to see the ugliness. I understand why you did it, Papa. Let me finish. Jin Woo moved to one of the benches along the wall and sat down. After a moment, Ha-jun joined him, leaving a small space between them. I've done things, Ha-jun. Things that would change how you see me if you knew the details. I've hurt people. I've ordered men to do terrible things. I've built my empire on violence and fear. Ha-jun was silent, his blind eyes facing forward. I told myself it was necessary, that in my world, you either dominate or you get destroyed. And maybe that's true. Maybe there was no other way to survive. But I never wanted that life for you. I never wanted you to carry the weight that I carry. I know, Papa. But now I see you training. I see you learning to fight, to defend yourself, to become something I never imagined you could be. And I don't know how to feel about it. Ha-jun turned toward his father. What do you mean? Jin Woo struggled to find the right words. This kind of conversation did not come naturally to him. He was a man of action, of decisions, of commands, not a man who spoke about feelings. Part of me is proud, he said finally. I see what you're becoming, and I'm proud. You're strong. You're determined. You're not letting your blindness define you. But part of me wishes none of this was necessary. Part of me wishes I could have given you a different life, a safe life, one where you never had to learn how to fight because there was no one coming to hurt you. Ha-jun was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. That life was never possible, Papa. Even if you weren't who you are, even if you had a normal job and we lived in a normal house, I would still be blind. I would still be vulnerable. The world is dangerous for people like me. That's what Zara keeps telling me. She's right. The training she's given me, the skills I'm developing, they're not just about the order or whatever threats are coming. They're about being able to live without fear, about not having to depend on other people to keep me safe. Jin Woo looked at his son, at this young man who spoke with such clarity and conviction. He remembered the small child who had gripped his hand tightly when walking through unfamiliar places. The boy who had cried when other children laughed at him for bumping into things. The teenager who had grown quieter with each passing year, withdrawing into a world of audiobooks and music because the physical world seemed closed to him. That boy was gone. In his place was someone Jin Woo was still learning to recognize. I used to think I could control everything, Jin Woo said, that if I was smart enough, ruthless enough, I could eliminate every threat before it reached you. I surrounded you with guards. I vetted every person who came into this house. I thought I had built an impenetrable wall around you. But walls can be breached. Yes, and guards can be bought. And the threats I know about are only a fraction of the threats that exist. Jin Woo shook his head. Zara has shown me how limited my protection really was. Ha-jun reached out and found his father's arm. You did what you thought was best. You can't blame yourself for not knowing about things that were hidden from you. I'm your father. It's my job to know. It's your job to love me and keep me safe. You've done that. You're still doing it. The methods are just changing. Jin-woo felt something loosen in his chest. He had carried guilt about his son for 16 years. Guilt about passing on whatever genetic flaw had caused Ha-jun's blindness. Guilt about the dangers his lifestyle posed. Guilt about not being the kind of father who could coach soccer games and help with homework. But sitting here with his son, hearing Ha-jun's acceptance and understanding, some of that guilt began to fade. I want to watch you train more, Jin-woo said. Not hiding on the stairs, actually watching, learning what you're capable of. I'd like that. And I want to know everything Zara is teaching you. Not because I don't trust her, but because I want to be involved. I've missed too much already. Ha-jun's face broke into a smile. We can arrange that. Although I should warn you, some of the techniques are hard to explain. You kind of have to experience them. Then I'll experience them. They sat together in comfortable silence for a few minutes. The basement felt different now, less like a secret space and more like a place they could share. Papa, Ha-jun said eventually, can I ask you something? Of course. The Order of the Crimson Gate. Zara has told me a little about them, but not everything. What do you know? Jin-woo considered how much to share. Ha-jun was 16, still a child in many ways. But he was also the target of these people. He deserved to understand what he was facing. They're old, powerful, they have connections everywhere, and they're patient. According to my sources, they've been known to watch targets for years before making a move. Why do they want me? Because of your abilities, your potential. They see people like you as threats to be eliminated before you can become powerful enough to challenge them. Ha-jun absorbed this information. How do we stop them? I don't know yet. I'm still gathering information. But I promise you, Ha-jun, I will find a way. No one is going to hurt you. Not while I'm alive. Ha-jun nodded slowly. And Zara? Do you trust her now? Jin-woo thought about the legendary Black Rose, the woman who had lied her way into his home, trained his son in secret, and revealed a world of threats he hadn't known existed. Did he trust her? I trust that she wants to protect you, he said carefully. Her methods are not what I would have chosen, but her goal seems genuine. Beyond that, I'm still deciding. She's a good person, Papa. Underneath everything, she's good. I can tell. How can you tell? Ha-jun touched his chest. I can hear people's hearts when they talk. Not just the rhythm, but something deeper. When someone is lying, there's a discord, a mismatch between what they say and what they feel. With Zara, there's no discord. She believes in what she's doing. She cares about what happens to me. Jin-woo filed this away. His son could detect lies. Another ability that Zara had helped him develop. It was useful, potentially invaluable in Jin-woo's world of deception and betrayal. Then I'll try to trust her too, Jin-woo said. They rose from the bench together. Ha-jun retrieved his shirt from where he had left it and pulled it on. Jin-woo watched him move through the space, navigating easily despite the equipment and obstacles. One more thing, Jin-woo said as they headed for the stairs. Ha-jun paused. Yes? When you're ready for live opponents, when Zara says you can handle it, I want to be there. I want to see what you can really do. Ha-jun's smile returned. You might be surprised. I think I already am. They climbed the stairs together, leaving the basement behind. As they emerged into the main floor of the mansion, Jin-woo felt something shift in his relationship with his son. Not a complete transformation, but the beginning of something new. A partnership, perhaps, a shared understanding of the challenges ahead. The road forward would not be easy. There were enemies in the shadows, traitors in his organization, and an ancient order waiting to strike. But Jinwoo was no longer facing these threats alone. He had Zara with her skills and knowledge, he had his resources and connections, and he had Ha-jun, his son, a young man who was becoming more capable with each passing day. Jinwoo placed a hand on Ha-jun's shoulder as they walked toward the kitchen. "You should eat something. Training takes a lot out of you." "I know. Zara makes me eat constantly. She says I'm burning too many calories." "She's probably right." "What do you want?" "Whatever is easy. I don't want to be a burden." Jinwoo stopped walking. "You have never been a burden, Ha-jun. I need you to understand that. Whatever challenges we've faced, whatever difficulties your blindness has caused, you have never been a burden to me." Ha-jun was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "I know, Papa. Thank you for saying it." They continued to the kitchen, where Jinwoo busied himself preparing food for his son. It was a simple task, something the staff usually handled, but today he wanted to do it himself. As he worked, he could hear Zara's footsteps somewhere above, moving through the house on whatever tasks occupied her time between training sessions. The mansion hummed with its usual quiet activity, staff members going about their duties, security personnel monitoring the grounds. On the surface, everything appeared normal. But beneath that surface, changes were taking root. Ha-jun was growing stronger. Jinwoo was beginning to see the world more clearly, and somewhere out there, enemies were watching, waiting, planning. The first test had passed. Ha-jun had proven himself capable of more than anyone had expected. But Jinwoo knew that the real tests were still to come, tests that would push his son to the limit, tests that would determine whether all of Zara's training had been enough. He set a plate of food in front of Ha-jun and sat across from him at the kitchen table. "Eat," he said. "You'll need your strength." Ha-jun picked up his chopsticks and began to eat. Jinwoo watched him. This son he was only beginning to know, and allowed himself a small measure of hope for what lay ahead. The attack came 3 weeks after Jinwoo began watching Ha-jun's training openly. It was a Tuesday evening, the sky dark with clouds that promised rain. Jinwoo was in his study reviewing financial reports when his phone lit up with a message from one of his informants in the underground network. "Word is spreading. People are talking about your son." Jinwoo's blood ran cold. He typed back immediately. "What are they saying?" "That the blind boy is being trained, that you're preparing him for something. Some think he's a threat, others think he's a target. The Tanaka family is interested. So are the Park brothers." Jinwoo set the phone down and stared at the wall. Someone had talked. The traitor in his organization had done more than leak information to the order. They had spread rumors through the underworld, painting a target on Ha-jun's back. He was reaching for his phone to call Zara when the first explosion shook the mansion. The sound was deafening, a thunderous boom that rattled the windows and sent books tumbling from shelves. Jinwoo was on his feet instantly, pulling the gun from his desk drawer as alarms began screaming throughout the house. His phone rang. Park Dae-ho, his security chief. "Sir, we have a breach. Multiple hostiles entering through the east gate. They took out the guardhouse with an explosive device." "How many?" "At least 12. Armed with automatic weapons. They're moving fast toward the main entrance." Jinwoo was already running for the door. "Where's my son?" "Last I saw, he was in the basement with the maid." Jinwoo sprinted through the hallway, his mind racing. The basement was on the opposite side of the mansion from the east gate. If the attackers were coming from that direction, Ha-jun had time, but not much. Gunfire erupted somewhere below, the sharp crack of automatic weapons answered by the deeper boom of shotguns. His security team was engaging the intruders, buying precious minutes. The sound of breaking glass echoed through the mansion as more attackers breached windows on the ground floor. Jinwoo reached the main staircase and descended 2 steps at a time. He could see the foyer below, could see his men taking positions behind furniture and doorways. Through the shattered remains of the front entrance, dark figures were advancing across the grounds, their weapons spitting fire in controlled bursts. "Get to the basement!" Zara's voice cut through the chaos. She appeared from a side corridor, moving with the calm purpose of someone who had seen far worse than this. In her hands was a wooden training staff, nothing more, yet she held it like it was the deadliest weapon in the world. "I'll handle them." "There are at least 12. You're going to fight them with a stick?" "I've handled more with less." She pushed past him, heading toward the gunfire. "Protect your son. That's all that matters right now." Jin-woo wanted to argue, wanted to stay and fight alongside his men, but Zara was right. Ha-jun was what mattered. Everything else was secondary. He turned and ran toward the basement stairs, but the sound of footsteps made him freeze. 3 men in black tactical gear were coming from the service corridor, having circled around through the kitchen. They saw him at the same moment he saw them. Jin-woo dove behind a marble pillar as bullets chipped away at the stone. He returned fire, forcing them to take cover, but he was pinned. He couldn't reach the basement stairs without exposing himself to their fire. Then he heard something that made his heart stop. Ha-jun's voice, coming from behind the attackers. "You should have checked your flanks." The attackers spun toward the voice, but Ha-jun was already moving. Jin-woo watched in stunned disbelief as his blind son flowed between them like water. A strike to one man's wrist sent his weapon flying. An elbow to another's solar plexus doubled him over. The third tried to bring his rifle around, but Ha-jun was inside his guard, using the man's own momentum to send him crashing into the wall. In less than 5 seconds, 3 armed professionals were on the ground, unconscious or incapacitated. "Papa, are you hurt?" Ha-jun asked, his blind eyes turned in Jin-woo's direction. Jin-woo could only stare. His son had just taken down 3 armed men without a weapon, without sight, without hesitation. "I'm fine," he managed to say. "How did you—" "I heard them coming through the service corridor. Their equipment makes a specific sound when they move. Zara taught me to recognize it." More gunfire erupted from the main entrance. Jin-woo could hear his security teams shouting, coordinating their defense. But there were too many attackers, and they were too well equipped. "We need to help Zara," Ha-jun said, already moving toward the sounds of combat. "Ha-jun, no! These men are here to kill you." "Then I'll make sure they don't succeed." Ha-jun picked up one of the fallen attackers' weapons, checking it with practiced efficiency. "I'm not the helpless child you remember, Papa. I haven't been for a while." They moved together through the mansion's corridors. Jin-woo watched in amazement as Ha-jun navigated the chaos without error. When they rounded a corner to find 2 attackers advancing toward them, Ha-jun reacted before Jin-woo even saw the threat. He pulled his father back, raised the weapon he had taken, and fired 2 precise shots that sent both men tumbling to the floor. "You can shoot?" Jin-woo asked, incredulous. "Zara taught me. I aim by sound. Their breathing, their heartbeats, the rustle of their clothing. It all creates a target I can track." They found Zara in the main foyer, surrounded by bodies. Her wooden staff was broken, replaced by a tactical knife she had taken from one of the fallen attackers. Blood ran from a cut on her forehead, but her movements were still precise, still deadly. As Jin-woo watched, she disarmed one man with a twist of her wrist, used his own weapon to strike another, and threw the knife with perfect accuracy into the shoulder of a third who was trying to flank her. Only 3 attackers remained standing, and they were backing toward the door, fear evident in their movements. They had come expecting an easy target. Instead, they had found death waiting for them. One of them spotted Jin-woo and Ha-jun, raising his weapon. Ha-jun moved before Jin-woo could react, firing 3 shots that sent the man sprawling. The other 2 tried to flee, but Zara was on them in an instant, her movements too fast to follow. They fell without a sound. Silence descended on the foyer. The attack was over. Jin-woo looked around at the devastation. Bodies everywhere, his security team emerging from cover, wounded but alive. His home transformed into a battlefield, and in the center of it all stood his son and Zara, both bloodied but unbroken. "Is anyone else hurt?" Zara asked, her voice steady despite the chaos they had just survived. Park Dae-ho limped forward, holding his shoulder. "We lost 4 men, 3 more wounded, but we held them off." "They weren't trying to win," Zara said, examining one of the dead attackers. "This was a probe, testing our defenses. The real attack will come later with more men and better preparation." Jin-woo holstered his weapon and walked to his son. Ha-jun stood among the carnage, the stolen rifle still in his hands, his blind eyes focused on nothing and everything at once. "You saved my life," Jin-woo said quietly. "You're my father. Of course I saved you." Jin-woo pulled his son into an embrace, not caring about the blood or the bodies or his men watching. He held Ha-jun tightly, feeling the strength in his son's frame, the steadiness of his breathing, the calm that seemed to radiate from him even after such violence. "I'm proud of you," Jin-woo whispered. "I know, Papa." When they separated, Jin-woo looked at Zara. She was cleaning the blood from her face with remarkable composure, as if this was just another training session. "You were right," he said to her, "about everything, the threats, the training, all of it." "This is only the beginning," Zara replied. "The Order knows about Ha-jun now. They know he's been trained. They'll come themselves next time, not just hired guns." Jin-woo nodded, his mind already working through the implications. His world had just become infinitely more dangerous. But looking at his son, at what Ha-jun had become, he felt something he hadn't expected. Hope. His son was not helpless. His son was not weak. His son was a warrior, and perhaps that would be enough to survive what was coming. The aftermath of the first attack left Jin-woo's mansion in ruins. 7 of his security team were dead. 3 more were wounded. The east wing was destroyed, windows shattered, walls riddled with bullet holes. Blood stained the marble floors that had once gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Jin-woo stood in what remained of his living room, surveying the damage while talking on his phone. "They weren't random thugs," Park Dae-ho reported from the hospital, where he was being treated for a gunshot wound to the shoulder. "Professional gear, coordinated movements. Someone paid serious money for this hit." "Who?" "Still working on that. But sir, this won't be the last. Word is already spreading that the attack failed, that your son fought back. People are talking about it like it's impossible." Jin-woo ended the call and looked across the room at Ha-jun, who sat calmly while Zara cleaned a cut on his knuckles. The boy had taken down 3 armed men in complete darkness. He had entered a firefight without hesitation. He had moved through chaos like he was born for it. "We need to leave," Zara said, not looking up from her work. "This location is compromised. They'll come again, and next time there will be more." "I don't run from my enemies," Jin-woo replied. "This isn't about running. It's about choosing the battlefield." Zara finished cleaning Ha-jun's wound and stood. "You have a safe house outside the city, correct? The one near the mountains?" Jin-woo's eyes narrowed. "How do you know about that?" "I know many things, Mr. Kim. The question is whether you're willing to use that location to our advantage." Before Jin-woo could respond, his phone rang again. This time it was one of his lieutenants, a man named Cho who managed territory in the southern district. "Boss, we have a problem. The Tanaka family is mobilizing. 40 men, maybe more. They're heading your way." Jin-woo felt his blood turn to ice. The Tanaka family controlled the Japanese Yakuza presence in Seoul. If they were moving against him, it meant someone had convinced them that Jin-woo was weak, vulnerable. "How long?" 20 minutes. "Maybe less." Jin-woo looked at Zara, who had clearly heard the conversation despite the phone not being on speaker. She was already moving, gathering weapons from the fallen attackers, checking ammunition. "Ha-jun," she called. "We're leaving. Get your training gear." The boy rose without question and headed for the basement. Jin-woo watched him go, then turned to Zara. 40 men. We can't fight that many. We won't fight them all. We'll create a bottleneck, control the engagement, and escape during the confusion. She checked the action on an assault rifle she had taken from one of the dead attackers. But I need you to trust me completely. No questions, no hesitation. Jin Woo studied her face. This woman who had lied to him, who had trained his son in secret, who claimed to be protecting them from threats he was only beginning to understand. Could he trust her? Ha-jun returned from the basement carrying a black bag. He had changed into dark training clothes and moved with the same calm purpose as Zara. I can hear vehicles approaching, he said. Multiple engines. They're not trying to be quiet. Good, Zara said. Overconfidence makes them sloppy. She turned to Jin Woo. We make our stand in the main hallway. It's narrow enough to prevent them from using their numbers effectively. Ha-jun and I will hold the center. You cover our flanks. My son is not fighting 40 Yakuza soldiers. Your son is the only reason we have a chance of surviving this. Zara's voice was hard. He can sense them coming before they appear. He can track multiple opponents simultaneously, and unlike us, he doesn't need light to fight. She moved to the electrical panel on the wall and studied it for a moment. When they breach the front entrance, I'll kill the power. The darkness will be our advantage. Jin Woo wanted to argue, wanted to grab his son and flee through the service tunnels. But he could already hear the vehicles pulling up outside. There was no time. Papa, Ha-jun placed a hand on his father's arm. Trust us. Trust me. Jin Woo looked at his son's face, saw the quiet confidence there, the absence of fear. When had his boy become this warrior? All right, he said. We do it your way. They took positions in the main hallway. Jin Woo pressed himself against the wall near a doorway, rifle ready. Zara stood in the center of the corridor, completely exposed, and Ha-jun positioned himself slightly behind her, his head tilted, listening. They're surrounding the building, he reported. 10 through the front, 10 through the back, the rest covering exits. Let them come, Zara said. The front door exploded inward, kicked open by men in tactical gear. They poured through the entrance, weapons raised, spreading out with military precision. Zara hit the lights. The mansion plunged into absolute darkness. For a moment, there was only silence. Then chaos erupted. Jin Woo heard gunfire, screams, the sound of bodies colliding. He couldn't see anything, couldn't tell friend from foe, but he could hear Ha-jun's voice, calm and clear. 3 on your left, Papa. Duck. Jin Woo dropped as bullets flew over his head. He fired blind in the direction Ha-jun indicated and heard bodies fall. Zara, 2 behind you, Ha-jun called out. The sound of impact, a grunt of pain. Silence. The battle raged in complete darkness. Jin Woo had been in firefights before, had killed men before, but never like this, never blind, completely dependent on his son's guidance. Move right, Papa. Now! Jin Woo rolled to the right as an explosion destroyed the spot where he had been standing. Debris rained down and he heard men shouting in Japanese, their voices panicked. They had expected an easy victory against a weakened target. Instead, they were being picked apart in the darkness by opponents they couldn't see. The back entrance, Ha-jun said. They're retreating. Emergency lights suddenly flickered on, casting the hallway in a dim red glow. Jin Woo could finally see the devastation. Bodies littered the floor. Some were moving, groaning in pain. Others would never move again. Zara stood in the center of it all, blood on her clothes, but none of it hers. She had moved through the darkness like death itself, precise and merciless. And Ha-jun stood beside her, untouched, his blind eyes surveying the carnage he couldn't see, but had orchestrated. We need to go, Zara said. They'll regroup, call for reinforcements. Jin Woo nodded, still processing what he had just witnessed. His son had guided them through a battle against impossible odds. had turned darkness from a disadvantage into their greatest weapon. They moved through the mansion, gathering essential items. Jin Woo's hands were steady now, his mind clear. The world had changed. His understanding of his son had changed. Everything had changed. As they reached the garage, Jin Woo turned to look back at his ruined home. This mansion had been his fortress, his symbol of power. Now it was just broken walls and shattered glass. "We'll rebuild," Ha-jun said, sensing his father's thoughts. "No," Jin Woo replied. "We'll build something better, something new." He looked at Zara, this warrior woman who had saved their lives, who had transformed his son into someone extraordinary. "The safe house," he said. "You were right. We need time to prepare for what's coming." Zara nodded. "The Order will have heard about tonight. They'll accelerate their plans. Then we accelerate ours." Jin Woo opened the car door for his son. "Whatever it takes, whatever Ha-jun needs to learn, teach him. No more holding back." For the first time since he had discovered her true identity, Zara smiled. "Now you're beginning to understand, Mr. Kim. Your son was never meant to hide behind walls. He was meant to tear them down." 3 months had passed since they fled to the mountain safe house. 3 months of intensive training. 3 months of Ha-jun pushing himself beyond every limit. 3 months of Zara preparing him for what she called the inevitable confrontation. Now, sitting in the back of the car as they descended toward Seoul, Jin Woo questioned everything. "This is insane," he said for the 3rd time. "Fighting in the underground arena is not the same as defending yourself. It's a spectacle, a blood sport." "It's necessary," Zara replied from the driver's seat. "The Order has been watching, waiting. They need to see Ha-jun as either a threat to be eliminated immediately or someone too dangerous to move against carelessly. Tonight determines which path they choose." Ha-jun sat beside his father, dressed in simple black training clothes. His face was calm, but Jin Woo could see the tension in his shoulders. "I'm ready, Papa." "You're 16 years old. You shouldn't have to be ready for this. Age means nothing in our world. You taught me that." Jin Woo wanted to argue, but they were already pulling into the underground parking structure beneath the Gwangju warehouse district. The fighting arena was hidden 3 levels below ground, a place where the criminal elite gathered to watch violence for entertainment. The space was already packed when they entered. Word had spread that something special was happening tonight, that Kim Jin-woo's blind son would fight. Some had come to see a massacre. Others had come hoping to witness the fall of the Kim family. Jin Woo recognized faces in the crowd, rivals, allies. Neutral parties who would align themselves with whoever proved strongest tonight. The Tanaka family had sent representatives. The Park brothers were there in person, their eyes cold and calculating. "They're all here," Jin Woo muttered. "Good," Zara said. "Let them all witness what Ha-jun has become." The announcer, a thin man with gold teeth, stepped into the ring. "Tonight, we have something unprecedented. The heir to the Kim Empire, despite his limitation, has requested the right to prove himself in combat." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Jin Woo's hands clenched into fists. "His opponent," the announcer continued, "is Kwon Tae's son, undefeated in 47 matches, the Mountain Breaker." The crowd erupted as Kwon entered the ring. He was massive, over 2 meters tall, muscles rippling under scarred skin. He had killed 3 opponents in sanctioned matches, many more in unsanctioned ones. Jin Woo grabbed Zara's arm. "You didn't tell me he would be fighting Kwon." "Ha-jun chose him," Zara said simply. "He wanted the strongest opponent available. He'll die. Have faith in your son, Mr. Kim. Have faith in what I've taught him." Ha-jun was already walking toward the ring, his steps measured and confident. The crowd fell silent as he climbed through the ropes, this blind teenager facing a monster who had destroyed grown men. Kwon laughed, the sound booming across the space. This is a joke. I don't fight children. Then you'll lose quickly, Ha-jun replied, his voice carrying clearly. Because I'm not a child. The referee, such as existed in these fights, signaled the start. Kwon moved first, a massive fist swinging toward where Ha-jun stood. But Ha-jun was already moving, sliding to the left, letting the blow pass harmlessly through empty air. The crowd gasped. Kwon spun, throwing a backhand that would have shattered bones. Ha-jun ducked under it, his movements fluid and precise. He struck Kwon's ribs as he passed, a quick blow that made the giant grunt. Lucky, Kwon snarled, and attacked again. But it wasn't luck. Jin-woo could see that now. Ha-jun was reading Kwon's movements before they happened. The shift of weight, the intake of breath, the subtle tension that preceded each attack. His son was fighting a man twice his size without sight, and he was winning. For 5 minutes, the dance continued. Kwon growing increasingly frustrated, his attacks becoming wilder. Ha-jun flowing around them, striking when openings appeared, targeting joints and pressure points with surgical precision. Then Kwon caught him. A lucky grab, or perhaps simple physics finally asserting itself. The giant's hand closed on Ha-jun's shoulder, and he lifted the boy off the ground. Got you now, little blind mouse. Jin-woo started to rise from his seat, but Zara held him back. Watch, she said. Ha-jun didn't struggle against the grip. Instead, he went limp, becoming dead weight. When Kwon adjusted his hold, Ha-jun moved. His knee came up, striking the giant's elbow at exactly the right angle. The joint hyperextended with a crack that echoed through the arena. Kwon screamed and dropped Ha-jun, clutching his damaged arm. Ha-jun landed on his feet and didn't hesitate. A strike to Kwon's knee buckled the giant's leg. Another to his throat left him gasping. A final blow to the temple sent him crashing to the canvas, unconscious before he hit the ground. The arena was silent. Ha-jun stood in the center of the ring, breathing hard but victorious. The blind son of Kim Jin-woo had just defeated one of the most dangerous fighters in the underground world. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Soon the entire arena was applauding, even Jin-woo's enemies acknowledging what they had witnessed. Jin-woo found himself on his feet, tears running down his face. His son, his blind son, had just done the impossible. The aftermath of the fight changed everything. Within hours, word had spread through every level of the criminal underworld. The blind heir to the Kim Empire was not weak. He was not helpless. He was something entirely unexpected. Dangerous. Jin-woo sat in his temporary office at the safe house, reading the messages flooding his phone. Offers of alliance. Warnings withdrawn. Enemies suddenly eager to negotiate. The Tanaka family wants to meet, Park Dae-ho reported. They're offering a full partnership, equal territory division. The Park brothers? They've withdrawn all claims to the eastern districts. They don't want a conflict with us anymore. Jin-woo set down his phone and walked to the window. In the training area outside, Ha-jun was practicing forms with Zara, their movements synchronized after months of training together. What about the order? Jin-woo asked. Park Dae-ho hesitated. No word yet, but my sources say they're reconsidering their position. Ha-jun is no longer seen as a weak target to be eliminated. He's a potential asset to be recruited or a threat to be avoided. Jin-woo watched his son move through the forms, each motion perfect, despite his inability to see them. He's 17 in a month. Sir? My son. He'll be 17 next month. When I was his age, I was running drugs for the Choi family, thinking I was tough because I carried a knife. Ha-jun just defeated a man who is killed with his bare hands. He's remarkable, sir. You should be proud. Jin-woo was proud, but he was also something else. Humbled. For years he had built walls around Ha-jun, thinking he was protecting him. In reality, he had been limiting him. It had taken Zara to show him the truth. He left the office and walked outside. Ha-jun sensed his approach immediately, turning toward him with a smile. Papa, did you hear? The Tanaka family wants to negotiate. I heard. Your victory last night has shifted the balance of power in Seoul. Hajun's smile faded. I didn't do it for power. I did it to prove that I'm not a liability, that you don't have to protect me anymore. Jinwoo reached out and placed a hand on his son's shoulder. You were never a liability, Hajun. I was the one who was blind to your potential, blind to what you could become. You were being a father. I was being a fool. Jinwoo looked at Zara, who stood quietly to the side. You saw what I couldn't. You gave my son something I never could have. I gave him training, Zara corrected. Everything else was already there. Jinwoo studied this woman who had entered their lives as a servant and revealed herself as a savior. What happens now? The immediate threat has passed. The order is reconsidering. Do you leave? Zara glanced at Hajun, then back at Jinwoo. That depends. My original mission was to protect Hajun and train him to protect himself. That mission is complete. But I've grown attached to both of you. And Hajun's training is far from finished. There's so much more he could learn, so much potential still untapped. Then stay, Jinwoo said. Not as a maid, not as a hidden protector. Stay as what you are, a teacher, a guardian, a member of this family. Zara's eyes widened slightly. In all the months he had known her, it was the first time Jinwoo had seen her genuinely surprised. You would trust me with that? After everything? The lies? The deception? You saved my son's life. You gave him the tools to save his own life. You've earned more than trust. You've earned my gratitude and my respect. Hajun stepped forward. Please stay, Zara. I still have so much to learn from you. Zara looked between them, father and son, and Jinwoo saw something shift in her expression. The constant watchfulness, the professional distance she had always maintained, softened into something warmer. Very well, I'll stay, but on one condition. Name it, Jinwoo said. No more secrets, between any of us. We face whatever comes as a family, with complete honesty. Jinwoo extended his hand. Agreed. Zara shook it, her grip firm and calloused from years of combat. Then she turned to Hajun. Tomorrow we begin weapons training. Real weapons, not training sticks. Hajun grinned. I'm ready. As Jinwoo watched them discuss training plans, he thought about the future. His empire would pass to Hajun one day, but it would not pass to a weak heir protected by guards and walls. It would pass to a warrior, trained by a legend, capable of defending himself and those under his protection. The blind boy who had once needed help walking through his own home was gone. In his place stood Hajun, heir to the Kim Empire, trained by the Black Rose, proven in combat. This was his legacy. Not the money or the power or the territory, but this remarkable young man who had overcome everything the world had thrown at him. Jinwoo had spent years building an empire, but Zara had helped him build something far more valuable. She had helped him build a son who could survive anything, and in their world, that was the greatest gift anyone could give. 1 year had passed since the night Hajun defeated Kwon Tae-sun in the underground arena. Jinwoo stood on the balcony of their new headquarters, a fortified building in the heart of Seoul that had been designed with both defense and functionality in mind. The old mansion had been rebuilt, but now served only as a residence. Business was conducted here, where every room had multiple exits, where the walls were reinforced, where security was absolute. Below, in the courtyard, Hajun was conducting a meeting with the lieutenants of their organization. Jinwoo watched his son, now 17, speaking with quiet authority to men 3 times his age. They listened without question, without the skepticism that had once colored their interactions with the blind heir. He's a natural leader, Zara said, joining him on the balcony. She wore dark tactical clothing now, having abandoned the maid's uniform completely. Her position in the organization was unique, not quite a lieutenant, not quite family, but something in between: guardian, teacher, advisor. He learned from watching me, Jinwoo replied, even when I thought he wasn't paying attention. He learned from surviving. That's the best teacher. Jinwoo nodded, watching as Ha-jun dismissed the meeting and walked toward the building. His movements were confident, assured. He navigated the space without hesitation, without the careful steps that had once marked his passage through the world. The order has been quiet, Jinwoo said. 6 months without any contact. They're watching, evaluating. Ha-jun's display of power changed their calculations. He's no longer a simple target to be eliminated. He's a potential player in their game. And if they come? Zara's expression hardened. Then they'll find us ready. Ha-jun is not the same boy they marked for death, and we're not the same family they thought they could destroy. The door opened behind them, and Ha-jun stepped onto the balcony. He moved directly to them, his spatial awareness so refined now that he could sense their exact positions from their breathing alone. The meeting went well, he reported. The southern territories are fully secured. The Tanaka family is honoring their agreement. Revenue is up 30% from last quarter. Jinwoo felt a surge of pride. His son was not just surviving in this world, he was thriving in it. The combination of Ha-jun's unique abilities and Zara's training had created something unprecedented, a blind crime lord who could read his enemies better than any sighted man. There's something else, Ha-jun continued. I've been thinking about expansion. Jinwoo raised an eyebrow. Expansion? Not territorial, something different. Ha-jun turned toward the city, his blind eyes seeing nothing but his mind clearly focused on something larger. There are others like me, people with abilities that the world doesn't understand, people the Order might target. What if we found them first? You want to recruit them? Zara asked, interest coloring her voice. I want to protect them, train them, give them what you gave me, the chance to be more than their limitations. Jinwoo considered this. It was ambitious, dangerous. It would put them in direct conflict with the Order's interests. And yet, it has merit, he said slowly. If we could build a network of trained individuals with enhanced abilities, we would be untouchable. The Order would have to think very carefully before moving against us. More than that, Ha-jun said, we would be giving people hope, showing them that being different doesn't mean being helpless. Jinwoo looked at his son, this young man who had transformed from a protected child into a protector of others. The evolution was complete. Ha-jun was ready not just to inherit the empire, but to reshape it into something new. Zara, Jinwoo said, could you train others, the way you trained Ha-jun? Not everyone has his potential. But yes, with the right students, I could build something formidable. Then we do it. Jinwoo made the decision instantly, as he had learned to do in his years of leadership. We find these people before the Order does. We give them shelter, training, purpose, and in return, they become part of our family. Ha-jun smiled, the expression lighting up his face. Thank you, Papa. Don't thank me. This is your vision, your future. I'm just helping you build it. They stood together on the balcony as the sun began to set over Seoul. The city lights were beginning to flicker on, millions of lives continuing their daily routines, unaware of the decisions being made in this building. I received word from my old organization today, Zara said suddenly. They've been monitoring the situation. They're impressed with what we've accomplished. What do they want? Jinwoo asked, immediately suspicious. Nothing. They simply wanted me to know that they consider my mission here complete. I'm free to leave if I choose. Ha-jun turned toward her, and for the first time in months, Jinwoo saw uncertainty in his son's expression. Are you leaving? Zara looked at both of them, these two men who had become her family in ways she had never expected. Where would I go? Everything I care about is here. My student who still has so much to learn. My employer who has become a trusted ally. My purpose. So you're staying? Ha-jun asked, hope evident in his voice. I'm staying. Someone needs to help train this army of gifted individuals you're planning to recruit, and someone needs to keep you from getting overconfident. Ha-jun laughed, the sound carrying across the courtyard. Several of the guards below looked up, surprised. It was rare to hear laughter from the Kim family. Jin-woo placed a hand on his son's shoulder and another on Zara's. They stood there, an unlikely family forged by circumstance and strengthened by adversity. A crime lord who had learned to see beyond his own limitations. A blind warrior who had turned his disability into his greatest strength. A legendary fighter who had found purpose in protection rather than violence. The future is going to be different, Jin-woo said. Not easier, but different. There will be new enemies, new challenges. The order won't stay quiet forever. Other families will test us. The government will continue trying to destroy what we've built. But we'll be ready, Ha-jun said with quiet confidence. Yes, Zara agreed. We'll be ready for all of it. Jin-woo thought about the journey that had brought them here. The night he had discovered Zara training Ha-jun in secret. The anger he had felt, the fear. The sense that his world was spinning out of control. Now he understood that it hadn't been spinning out of control. It had been evolving into something stronger. His empire was no longer built on fear alone. It was built on strength, capability, and the unbreakable bonds of a family that had chosen each other. Ha-jun was no longer his weakness, the vulnerable point his enemies could exploit. He was the future of the Kim Empire, trained by the best, tested in combat, proven in leadership. And Zara was no longer the deceptive maid who had infiltrated his home. She was the guardian who had saved them all, the teacher who had unlocked Ha-jun's potential, the warrior who stood between them and anyone who would do them harm. Tomorrow we begin searching for others with abilities, Jin-woo announced. Quietly at first, we need to build our network carefully, avoid attracting the order's attention until we're ready. I have some contacts who might help, Zara offered. People from my past who specialize in finding the gifted. Good. Use them. Jin-woo turned to Ha-jun. This is your project, your vision. You'll lead it. Ha-jun nodded, his expression serious. I won't disappoint you, Papa. You never have. As night fell completely over Seoul, they remained on the balcony, planning for a future that none of them could have imagined a year ago. The blind boy who had hidden in his room was gone. The father who had built walls instead of bridges had changed. The warrior who had lived in shadows had found a home. Together, they would face whatever came next. Together, they would build something unprecedented in the criminal underworld. An empire that protected the vulnerable while maintaining its power, that turned disabilities into advantages, that chose family not by blood, but by bond. The Kim Empire would survive. More than that, it would thrive. Because it was no longer led by just a crime lord with connections and wealth. It was led by a family that had learned the most important lesson of all. True strength came not from what you could see, but from what you could sense, what you could feel, what you could survive. And they had survived everything. Jin-woo looked at his son, blind but more perceptive than any sighted man. He looked at Zara. Deadly, but devoted to protection rather than destruction. He looked at the city below, full of threats and opportunities in equal measure. The future was uncertain, dangerous, full of challenges they couldn't yet imagine. But for the first time in his life, Kim Jin-woo was not afraid of it. He was ready for it. They all were. If this story touched your heart, wait until you see what's coming next. It's even more powerful and inspiring than you can imagine. So don't go anywhere. Click on that video showing on your screen right now to dive into another amazing story that will absolutely blow your mind. Trust me, you won't regret it.